guys, it's Sam, and this is my January wrap-up. So I do feel like we're starting off the year strong. I think all of my goals and my intentions that I set with the new year are working out reading-wise. There is a bit of a mixed bag this month, but overall I'm feeling very positive about it. I have some lower ratings and some really high ratings. Let's get into it. So in January, I read 6 books and 2,473 pages. Now that I have a little monthly reading stat thing, I'm going to keep track of that. I also finished 2 different series this month. Yes, I'm getting on it. Starting the goals early. So the first book that I read this month was Lightbringer by Claire Legrand. This is a book that I was trying to finish by the end of 2021 and didn't quite get there, but that's okay. This is the third and final book in the Imperium trilogy. And this trilogy follows 2 different women in the same world but 1,000 years apart. And in this world they are at war with angels and they have elemental magic. The humans do, and then these 2 women have a special kind of elemental magic. And we figure out throughout the series how their stories intertwine and everything. Like I mentioned, this is the final book. I do plan to do a review for the whole series, probably coming up next week. And this is a book that I originally started reading in October and was reading on audio, and I got about 65% of the way to the audio over like months that I kept getting it from the library, and realized you're not enjoying this. So I went and actually got the physical copy of the book and started rereading it from the beginning, and that actually helped. What I do find that I need to do, and I've talked about this a little bit on TikTok recently, is that I have to reread the book prior to the current book if I want to get fully immersed in the story. And I didn't do that here because at this point I was kind of like, this is a wash, I'm already in it, I'm at least restarting it, whatever, and I did get reinvested in that way. But recaps are not enough for me, and if I'm fully invested in a story, I have to reread the previous book to get re-immersed in it. So I didn't do that here, but I probably should have. But I think overall, restarting on a physical copy helped with this. Some books are better or worse in different forms, and I just was not vibing with the narrator of this series. Anyway, that was all sidetracked to say that I liked this conclusion. It is not perfect, but this series as a whole is interesting to me because I don't sit here and like love all of the characters, just get like super invested, but thematically, I love what it does. I really enjoy, in particular, the villain main character dynamics here, because the villain is the same villain for both characters, so I really dig just the dynamics there. We do have a villain main character romance with one of them, but it's shown to be what it is, and that's really interesting. We have a character's sort of descent into villainy going on. We just have a lot there, and again, just thematically, like what this explores, I really dig. I will say by this last book, I did enjoy the one character's perspective, Riel, a bit more, and I think ultimately it turned out that like she was the main character of this, even though there are technically 2 main characters, but I felt like the other character, Eliana, got a little bit overshadowed in this, and that ultimately we were like telling and wrapping up Riel's story the most. This also had kind of a bittersweet ending. I don't really know any other way that it could have been done, but I do know that this would probably be very polarizing for people and they wouldn't like everything about it. And there are some things that I still don't quite think that it gets right. There's one relationship in particular that it gives me the ick because of the like age difference and things. I just don't like that as much. But overall, I really dig this. I really like Claire Legrand's writing, and I really like what she explores in her books. So she really has become like an auto-read author for me because I just really like what she does. So I'm interested to see what she comes out with next. I gave this book 4 stars, and overall, I would say this series is a 4-star series for me. I then read The Wolf and the Woodsman by Ava Reed. I already have a spoiler-free review for this, so I'll link that on the screen for you to check out. This is an adult fantasy standalone that follows our main character of Avike, who is a pagan woman living in a village, and every few years, the woodsmen from the king come and take a girl from the village who has like magical powers, and they don't really know why. This time around, Avike gets taken, but not because she has powers, but because her village sets her up as kind of like a decoy, and she gets pulled into everything going on political machinations wise, and she figures out a lot of stuff that's happening. This does have triggers for self-harm, death of animals, a lot of body horror, and some like physical abuse and bullying. This is based on Eastern European, particularly Hungarian, history and culture, then also Jewish mythology and folklore, and I really dug absolutely everything about this. I already talked about this in my review at length, but this had everything for me that I was going to enjoy. It has magical sentient forests and Eastern European sort of like forest folklore and things. It has 3 different religions that it's exploring, and all of those religions are like true, and that the magic works in all of these religions. It has a hate to love, like enemies to lovers, sort of slow burn type angsty romance going on as a subplot. Our main character Viveke is a stubborn and impulsive character that not everyone's going to like, but that I usually kind of vibe with those female characters, so I really liked her, and I just like everything that this explored, the way that it was written, everything. No complaints. So I gave this one 5 out of 5 stars, and I'm very excited for the future of this author. This was her debut, and I can't wait to see what she writes next. Next, I read Remote Control by Nnedi Okorafor. This is a standalone sci-fi novella that I listened to on audiobook. And in this, we are following Sankofa, and she is a teenager, and a handful of years ago, she stumbled across this seed that might be of alien origin, and it basically changed her physically to where she is sort of deadly. Like, she can kill people in like large swaths from like magical energy. And we're basically following her for a portion of her life. And we are following her as she is sort of just like wandering through life and trying to find her place in the world, and just like figuring out like what her goals and things are, while also getting like the backstory of what happened to her and everything. This does have triggers for death of loved ones, death of children, and death of animals. And it's so hard to sort of talk about novellas because this is so short, but I do think it packs a pretty big punch, and it really is, like I said, just sort of a kind of slice of life, but a little bit more like depressing and dark slice of life. And just, you're just following this girl during this time, and like, that's it. I will say, because it's a novella, you don't necessarily get a lot of like side characters fleshed out or anything. You do get our main character fleshed out pretty well, but again, just during a small portion of her life. And this, like I said, is an Afrofuturistic, so you get some like sort of sci-fi type elements, but nothing too major. So I think this is a good book. Again, if you're trying to dip your toes into sci-fi or something, this is not a huge leap. I really enjoy what Nnedi Okorafor does with worlds and things too, so I need to get back into some of her novels and stuff as well, but I also want to read Binti, which is a novella series. But anyway, I liked this. I wanted something like nice and quick to listen to on audio, and it was just like a 2 or 3 hour max audiobook. So I listened to it during one hike, and that's what I wanted. Actually, I think I'm gonna start doing more audiobooks for novellas, because it's just like really satisfying to like finish it in an afternoon. But anyway, I gave this 3.5 out of 5 stars. I then read These Violent Delights by Chloe Gong. This was our House Salt Book Club pick for this month, so we've already done the live show for this, and I will link that on the screen. This is advertised as a Romeo and Juliet retelling in Shanghai between 2 rival gangs, one that is Chinese and one that is Russian. And like I said, Romeo and Juliet, but with a fantasy twist. However, I would say go into this knowing that this is a very, very loose retelling of Romeo and Juliet. Very loose. There's some elements that are brought in, but I'm not exactly, I don't really think they're brought in that well, honestly. And that this is more sci-fi than fantasy. The fantasy elements are incredibly light. This is more so a historical fiction with a small sci-fi element that does not get resolved in book 1, more so than anything else. There are trigger warnings in here for body horror. A lot of just like violence, body horror type violence. This was a book that I was actually pretty excited about. I thought that I was really going to like it because I hadn't really heard anyone say anything bad about it. I'm a big fan of Romeo and Juliet. I love a star-crossed lover story. Romeo plus Juliet of the, 1997 Baz Luhrmann movie is one of my favorites. This just did not give what I wanted it to give. The pacing in this was really off. It was really slow, and honestly, not a lot happened. This is sort of a well, again, Romeo and Juliet is kind of enemies to lovers, but I wouldn't really call them enemies to lovers. Romeo and Juliet is more like star-crossed lovers. This in here is more, they are enemies to lovers that had like a history, so they knew each other previously, and I think that kind of didn't work because there weren't enough flashbacks in here for you to really like feel that form a relationship well. It would have almost been better if we had started their relationship in this, and that would have made it more of a Romeo and Juliet kind of story. So that element of their characters was pretty disappointing. I liked a lot of the side characters, but not enough to really make me like love the story or want to continue with it. I was pulling out for really liking the ending of this because I wanted some explanations as far as the fantasy stuff that we really didn't get, but again, that was very unsatisfying. And there was also just some disjointedness in the writing. There was a bunch of different sort of like writing styles combined in here, and even within paragraph, we would have it would jump perspectives around within the same paragraph, which was just very odd. We talked about this at length during the live show that I posted, so you can check that out if you want more of our in-depth thoughts and my in-depth thoughts, but I ended up giving this 2 out of 5 stars. really missed the mark in a lot of ways for me. I'm not opposed to reading things by Chloe Gong in the future. I'm not going to continue with this series because this next book looks like it's just going to be like a repeat of book 1 in a lot of ways, and I don't want to do that again. But I would potentially read other things by her in the future. Then after that experience of not enjoying that book, I was like, I cannot be put in a slump. So I went against what I usually do and ended up rereading a book that I knew was 5 stars to put myself on the right path. So I reread The City of Brass by S.A. Chakraborty, the first book in the David Bode trilogy, and this was such a good choice. I have a full review and gush for this from a few years ago when I first read it in, I believe, 2020. This is the first book in an adult fantasy that is starting out in 18th century Cairo and follows the main character of Nahri, and she is a woman who has like healing powers and she doesn't really know why, and she's an orphan and she's grown up in Cairo, and she one day accidentally summons a warrior djinn and gets taken off to David Bode because she has a place there of importance that she doesn't even know about, and like she's thrown into this world of the djinn. I dig this so much. It was so nice to be back in this world. As soon as I picked this up, I was like, this is what I wanted. The writing is beautiful. Like all of the characters are interesting. And what I really love about this, and that I loved even more on reread, was seeing how basically every character, besides Nahri, but like just because she doesn't really know a lot of the history, all of the competing like political affiliations and like peoples that live in David Bode are all wrong and all right at the same, like there's no side that you can pick. In so many stories there's like a very obvious like underdog, or like the people that like almost didn't do anything wrong ever, and like everyone does everything wrong in this. So there's no one to really pull for besides our main character, who's like new to this and doesn't really know what's going on. So all the characters are flawed. You go from loving to hating people. It's so interesting. The dynamics are so interesting. The world is amazing with all of the creatures and all of the political machinations and all of the magic and everything. There's so much mystery. Again, the writing is just like impeccable. The visuals, everything. I love this so much. So I was very happy to be back in this world. I said that I wanted to reread this year and then continue on with the series, and I have. Already, because after this I immediately picked up Kingdom of Copper, which I didn't finish this month, so I'm not going to be talking about it, but this is the only book that I had read in the series so far, and now I'm on to Kingdom of Copper, which is my first read of that, but I pretty much plan on finishing this series this month in February, and I'm very excited to be back in this world and just like re-immersed. And that's when I realized that I need to reread the book previous always. So that's like my thing now, as much as it pains me because I like to just like read new things. No, I have to do what I did here because I'm so much more immersed. If I would have gone to the second book not having reread this, only reading a recap, it would not have been enough. I would have not been as like invested as I am. So anyway, 5 out of 5 stars to this again. And the last book that I read this month was All the Tides of Fate by Adeline Grace. This is another book that I listened to on audio, and this is the second book in the All the Stars and Teeth duology. This is a YA duology that follows the main character of Amara, and she is the like part of the ruling family. She's the princess, heir to the throne, in this island kingdom where every different island has different magic, and she and her family have soul magic, which is like the ruling magic, very powerful. And the first book, something goes kind of wrong with her. I forget if it's like initiation ceremony or like something with her soul magic, and so she sort of goes on a quest about that, and then she starts uncovering more things about like the magic and how the magic works in this world and all this stuff. There's also a romance that develops between her and a pirate. So this is very much like a seafaring elemental-y, although it's more than just elemental magic, but like a ton of different types of magic type YA duology. I hadn't read the first book in a while, and I didn't reread it for this, which is fine. And for this series, I didn't need to reread the first book. I mean, I probably would have been more immersed, but it's fine that I didn't, because I was very much like, do I want to read the second book? Do I care enough? Whatever. The audiobook for this was fine, and I think I would have had a similar experience if I would have reread the first book and then read this and read it in physical copy and all of that. What I like about this series is that it's very sort of like, I wouldn't quite call it atmospheric, but like her descriptions and depictions of like settings and types of magic and people and stuff is really cool. This was a debut duology, so I'm looking forward to seeing what else she does in the future. I also really liked the characters. There's a little sort of like found family crew going on here with like the ship. They do a lot of like seafaring, traveling around. So if you're wanting sort of like piratey type vibes, you have a little bit of that here. And I liked all the different like characters in the little found family dynamic. And I also really liked our like main character. Her character arc felt very earned, in addition to I really like the dynamic between her and the guy Bastion. It's even in the first book I said this, like they were very supportive, very like interesting interesting. I actually think this author would do really well even with like an adult series because of the like complexity of like relationships and stuff that she does, especially with those few. The plot stuff I think would have been the weakest. It's fun and like sort of fast paced and they're very go, but not super complex. Stuff was wrapped up pretty easily and it's just like more fun than anything else. Still explore some like interesting themes and stuff, but it's just kind of like not anything too complex there. So I think this is a really fun series if you like that sort of like seafaring island, bunch of different kinds of magic, piratey sort of vibes, but is not like overall anything like outstanding. I would say the whole series is a 3-star series. I gave this book 3 stars. Liked it. Don't love it. It won't sit in my feelings very highly, but I would recommend it for like those things if you're interested in any of those kind of tropes. So that is it for all the books that I read in January. Comment below, let me know how your reading month went. Thank you all for watching and I'll see you other guys soon. Bye.